Intelligence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet person in the corner rewriting the entire game in their mind. Have you noticed how lately people's tone changes when your name comes up? That awkward pause before they speak, that careful phrasing like they're tiptoeing through a minefield. Congratulations, you've officially entered the whisper zone, the place where your name carries both curiosity and caution. Here's a fact most people don't know. Studies show that humans instinctively fear what they don't understand, especially when it involves intellect. That's why people gossip about brilliance. It's their way of explaining what they can't decode. When someone operates from instinct, emotion, and impulse, your level of awareness looks like sorcery. You've probably noticed how they go from laughing with you one moment to studying you the next. They start to analyze how you think, why you know so much, and what your silence might mean. It's not paranoia, it's observation. You don't play by their rules, and that unsettles them, because deep down they can sense that you're not just thinking, you're calculating. Your presence alone shifts conversations. People start editing their sentences mid-speech around you, like your intellect might fact-check their soul. You've become the unspoken truth serum in human form. Some admire it, others fear it. Either way, they can't stop talking. And let's be honest, it's kind of funny. The same people who once dismissed you as too quiet, too deep, or too serious are now whispering like they're in a classified meeting every time your name drops. You didn't change. You just stopped dumbing yourself down to make them comfortable. So now, here we are. The latest whisper isn't about who you're dating, what you're wearing, or where you've been. It's about how you think. They're realizing you're not someone to play with, not because you're mean, but because you're mentally untouchable. And that, right there, is where the story gets interesting. Let's unpack exactly why your intelligence has become the room's unspoken tension, and why you're suddenly the person everyone's both curious about and quietly afraid to test. Number one, you don't outsmart people, you outsee them. That's what truly unsettles them. Outsmarting is about competition. Outseeing is about comprehension. You don't play the game better. You understand the players. You don't guess what's happening. You see what's being hidden. You move through conversations with quiet precision, noticing patterns in speech, shifts in energy, and the subtle pauses that reveal far more than words ever could. It's not that you're suspicious, it's that your awareness operates on multiple frequencies at once. While others hear the surface, you decode the undertone. People often mistake this for paranoia, but it's not. It's perception. You've lived through enough illusions to recognize when something doesn't match its mask. You don't need to dig for truth. It reveals itself naturally in your presence. That's why many grow uneasy around you. They sense that their usual tactics won't work. Their tone softens, their humor changes, and their eyes dart as if your awareness might expose what they hope to hide. You outsee because you don't react. You observe. Your mind collects data, not drama. You're not distracted by how things appear. You're focused on how they function. It's not intelligence in the academic sense. It's spiritual intelligence, emotional literacy, psychological sharpness, all fused into one. You recognize motive under charm, manipulation under empathy, and weakness under pride. And the unsettling truth is, you do it effortlessly. That's what makes people whisper. They can't figure out how you see so much without prying, how you know so much without asking. It's like you have invisible access to truth. You don't confront people. You let their patterns reveal them. You don't argue. You let evidence pile up until it speaks for itself. You're not trying to be right. You're trying to be real. That's what separates you from the crowd. People who live by deceit fear being seen clearly, and you are clarity in human form. You don't expose people maliciously. Your awareness simply makes pretense uncomfortable. They can feel you detecting the unspoken. That's why your name carries that whisper of caution, because you're not someone who plays the game blindly. You see the whole board, every hidden move, every silent motive. You don't outsmart people, you outsee them, and that's the kind of intelligence no one can defend against. Number 2. Your calm is misread as weakness until it becomes a weapon. People often assume that silence means surrender, but in your case, it's strategy. You don't react immediately because you're processing everything: tone, motive, energy, and consequence. You've learned that reacting too fast only feeds confusion, while stillness exposes truth. When chaos breaks out, you don't rush to prove a point or defend yourself. You let time uncover what words can't. That composure is what unsettles people, not because they think you're slow, but because they realize too late that you're studying them while they reveal themselves. Your calm isn't indifference. It's self-mastery. You've outgrown the need to match people's emotional frequency just to be understood. You know that anger clouds logic and defensiveness feeds manipulation. So, while others swing wildly with their emotions, you stay centered. That's why your presence feels unpredictable, not because you're volatile, but because you can't be provoked. The moment someone realizes they can't get a rise out of you, they lose power. That's when your calm turns from misunderstood to intimidating. People often talk about strength like it's loud, like it needs to announce itself, but your kind of strength whispers. You don't threaten, you don't shout, and yet everyone senses that you're not the one to play with. Your restraint confuses them because they mistake reaction for relevance. They expect noise, but you give them nothing. That nothing, that silence, starts to echo louder than any argument could. It forces them to confront themselves, their words, and their intent. Your calm is a controlled fire. It doesn't need to blaze to burn. It teaches lessons without lectures. Those who misread it as passivity soon discover it's actually foresight. You've learned that not every battle deserves your roar. Some only require your stillness. By the time people realize your silence was never weakness, it's too late. You've already understood their game, seen their angle, and decided the outcome in your mind. You win by not playing. That's the brilliance behind your calm. It doesn't need recognition, it just needs timing. And when it strikes, it's always surgical, never emotional. Your calm isn't weakness, it's intelligence disguised as peace. Number 3. You don't react, you reprogram. That's what separates you from most people. When something or someone tries to trigger you, you don't give them the emotional performance they expect. You process the situation like data, decoding the meaning behind it, understanding the lesson it carries, and then quietly changing how it affects you going forward. That's power at its purest form. The ability to rewrite your own emotional responses instead of letting circumstances dictate them. People can't manipulate you because you don't operate on impulse anymore. You operate on awareness. You've reached a point where anger doesn't consume you, it informs you. Pain doesn't paralyze you, it refines you. You've learned to take the energy thrown at you and redirect it into something constructive. That's why people who try to get under your skin always end up frustrated. You don't fight back, you upgrade. You take what was meant to drain you and turn it into a lesson that strengthens your internal code. Your growth isn't random, it's intentional. Every experience, good or bad, becomes an update in your system. This unnerves people who thrive on emotional control. They're used to pressing buttons and watching others explode. But with you, the buttons don't work anymore. You've deactivated their access. You've learned that reacting gives them energy, while restructuring the meaning behind the situation gives you clarity. You don't need revenge. You prefer evolution. You don't seek to get even. You seek to get better. That's how you keep outgrowing people who once thought they could break you. Your intelligence doesn't just sit in your mind, it lives in your emotional system. You understand that reactions are currency, and you've stopped giving yours away for free. Every time someone tries to throw negativity your way, you treat it as raw material to build something new. You transmute what was meant to destroy you into something that elevates you. That's what it means to reprogram. You don't escape pain, you rewrite its purpose. While others repeat cycles, you rewrite patterns. While others fight battles, you design outcomes. You've learned that control isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering your own frequency. You don't react, you reprogram. And that's how you quietly take back authority over everything that once had power over you. Number 4, you are a psychological mirror with no filter. People encounter you expecting connection but end up facing themselves. Your presence naturally pulls truth to the surface, not because you try to expose it, but because your energy doesn't support falsehood. You make people hear the echo of their own intentions. When someone approaches you with manipulation, it bounces back as discomfort. When they come with sincerity, it's amplified as warmth. That's why reactions to you are always intense. People don't actually respond to you. They respond to what you awaken within them. Your intelligence doesn't entertain masks. You don't fall for charm, pity, or authority. You read the underlying vibration. It's not even about judgment. It's about alignment. You can sense when someone's words don't match their soul, when a compliment hides jealousy, or when kindness feels rehearsed. That awareness can be uncomfortable for people who survive through pretense. They begin to feel seen through, and that's a terrifying experience for anyone who relies on illusion for identity. You don't need to call people out. Your presence does it for you. It's why some start avoiding you after being around you for a while. Not because you did something wrong, but because they saw too much of themselves reflected in your calm. You don't make people feel small. You make them aware. And awareness, for those living in denial, feels like exposure. You force people to confront their double life, the one they live publicly and the one they suppress privately. It's also why people who are genuine feel safe with you. They don't have to pretend. They sense that with you, authenticity is the only language that exists. You don't play mind games, you simply exist in truth. And that automatically dismantles anything false around you. It's not arrogance, it's spiritual precision. You're wired to reveal reality without effort. Being this kind of mirror isn't always comfortable. You attract deep souls and repel shallow ones. You awaken love and trigger defensiveness in equal measure. But that's the cost of clarity. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to reflect. And the ones strong enough to face their reflection in you will always find transformation staring back at them. Number 5. You play chess in a world that only understands checkers. Your mind isn't built for surface games. It's wired for long-term structure. While others get caught up in what's happening now, you're already 10 steps ahead, reading how today's moves shape tomorrow's reality. That's what confuses people about you. They can't trace your thought process because it's not linear. You think in patterns, probabilities, and timing. You don't just react to situations. You design outcomes through quiet precision. Most people operate on impulse. They move because something provoked them. You move because something revealed itself. You study motives, timing, and spiritual laws before you act. You've learned that not every opportunity is an invitation, and not every silence is weakness. Sometimes the smartest move is not to move at all. You understand that true intelligence isn't about having the loudest presence. It's about mastering timing, restraint, and perception. That's why you confuse manipulators. They try to bait you emotionally, expecting you to play their quick, shallow game. But you're not on that board anymore. You watch them celebrate early victories while you're quietly positioning yourself for the real one. You're not just thinking 2 steps ahead. You're preparing a completely different arena, where their tricks no longer apply. That's what people don't understand. You don't win because you fight harder. You win because you see further. Your intelligence blends logic with intuition. You feel the energy behind decisions while analyzing their structure. That dual awareness makes you unpredictable. Not because you're random, but because you're too layered to decode. People can't anticipate your next move because it's based on insight, not impulse. You're not just strategic. You're prophetic in the way you understand timing and consequence. The reason people whisper about you is simple. They've realized you're playing an entirely different game. While they chase applause, you study alignment. While they chase attention, you're studying energy. And when your results finally show, it always looks effortless, like luck. But deep down, they know it's calculation disguised as calm. You play chess in a world that only understands checkers, and the quietness of your strategy is exactly what makes your intelligence impossible to challenge. Number 6. You decode energy faster than words can explain it. You don't listen to what people say. You feel what they mean. Long before anyone reveals their true motives, you already sense the vibration behind their words. It's not guesswork. It's sensitivity, sharpened by experience. You've been lied to enough times to recognize the tremor of insincerity. You've been around enough masks to know the texture of authenticity. While most people get carried away by tone, appearance, or charm, you're tuned into the unspoken, the frequency that tells the truth before the mouth ever opens. You pick up on dissonance immediately. When someone's words sound kind but their energy feels off, you can't ignore it. You notice how their body tenses slightly when they compliment you, or how their smile doesn't reach their eyes. You catch the hesitation in their energy, the hidden jealousy in their enthusiasm, the control in their forgiveness. And because you sense it so quickly, people often think you're paranoid or overly analytical, until the truth eventually exposes itself and proves you were right all along. Your intelligence doesn't just process information, it processes vibration. That's what makes your discernment so sharp. You've learned that everything carries frequency, voices, intentions, environments, even silence. You walk into a room and immediately know who's genuine, who's heavy, and who's pretending. You can feel when something sacred is present, or when something manipulative is being masked as spiritual. You read life like energy in motion, not words on a page. That's why people can't lie to you comfortably. Even when they say all the right things, their energy betrays them. You don't call them out. You simply adjust your distance. You don't explain your intuition. You trust it. You've learned that explanation is for the logical, but discernment is for the awakened, and your awareness doesn't wait for evidence. It is the evidence. This kind of perception can feel isolating at times because you sense what others can't even name. But it's also what protects you. It shields you from manipulation, hidden motives, and spiritual traps. You don't just read energy, you understand it, speak it, and respond to it with mastery. Your intelligence is not of intellect alone, it's of frequency, and that makes you a translator of truth in a world fluent in deception. Number 7. You never needed validation. You needed solitude to remember who you are. At some point you realized that the noise around you was shaping your thoughts more than your own truth was. You saw how easily people lose themselves trying to be seen, and you decided that disappearing was the only way to reconnect with what was real inside you. While everyone else was performing for attention, you withdrew into quiet, not because you were broken, but because you were rebuilding. You weren't running from the world. You were detoxing from its influence. In that solitude, something powerful happened. Your mind cleared, and your intuition sharpened. You began to understand yourself without the echo of other people's opinions. The silence that used to scare you started to speak back, teaching you things no mentor, no friend, no crowd could ever explain. You learned that validation is addictive because it fills the spaces where self-awareness is missing. But when you learn to sit with yourself long enough, that craving dissolves. You stop needing applause because you've met the version of you that doesn't perform. You discovered that peace and power are twins, and both are born in isolation. While others measure success by how seen they are, you've learned that real mastery happens in private. The ones who make the loudest noise often do so to distract from the emptiness inside. But you don't need to convince anyone anymore. Your self-study became your sanctuary. You know your triggers, your strengths, your blind spots, and your boundaries. That kind of awareness can't be purchased or praised into existence. It's earned in silence. And that's what makes you different now. People feel your depth before you even speak. You don't beg for understanding or compete for relevance. Your presence already commands both. You've become unshakable because you've already met your own shadow and made peace with it. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. You didn't isolate to hide. You isolated to remember. Validation can make someone visible, but solitude makes them real. And now that you know who you are, no one can rewrite that story for you again. Number 8. You know how to let people hang themselves with their own rope. You've learned that arguing with deceit only gives it oxygen, so you stopped trying to prove what time will eventually reveal. You understand that truth doesn't need a lawyer. It only needs patience. That's why, when people lie on you, twist your words, or try to make you look like the villain, you don't rush to defend yourself anymore. You just watch. You let them dig, perform, and build their web of contradictions until it collapses under its own confusion. You've seen this play out enough to know that falsehood always self-destructs. Lies require maintenance, constant patchwork to keep the illusion alive. But truth stands still. It doesn't need to be managed. That's why you no longer chase explanations or try to clean up misunderstandings. You've mastered the art of spiritual restraint, letting divine timing do the exposing. The same people who once mocked your silence end up choking on their own stories when reality catches up. Your intelligence recognizes that exposure isn't an act, it's a process. You let people show who they are even when it hurts, because you trust the order of things. You know that trying to control the narrative only delays justice. So instead of wasting your breath, you conserve your energy. You observe patterns, take mental notes, and quietly remove yourself from proximity. By the time everyone else realizes who the real deceiver was, you've already moved on to peace. That's what unnerves people about you. You're calm in the face of betrayal. You don't fight fire with fire. You let it burn itself out. You know the deception carries a timer. Every lie has an expiration date, so you give people the rope. Not to destroy them, but to allow their own intentions to reveal themselves. You understand that what's built on manipulation can't stand under divine light. In a world obsessed with quick revenge and public validation, your patience looks dangerous. But it's not revenge you seek. It's resolution. And the truth, every single time, delivers it for you. That's what makes your intelligence divine. It doesn't rush to expose. It simply allows. Because eventually, everyone's rope runs out. Number 9. You're not intimidating. You're uncontrollable. That's what really gets under people's skin. You don't fit into the usual hierarchies where flattery buys access and fear demands compliance. You operate on your own code. People can't bribe you with attention, guilt you with emotion, or corner you with intimidation. You don't respond to those tactics because you see them coming from miles away. You've studied human behavior so deeply that manipulation no longer surprises you. It just exposes where people are operating from. You've learned that power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from self-governance. When you own your emotions, your boundaries, and your reactions, no one else can. That's what unsettles people who rely on control to feel important. They can't figure out why their usual methods don't work on you. They compliment you, and you don't melt. They criticize you, and you don't flinch. They threaten to withhold approval, and you don't chase it. It leaves them powerless, because control only works on the controlled. And you're not one of them. Your calm independence often gets mistaken for arrogance, but it's really clarity. You know what you stand for, and you know what you'll never tolerate again. That makes you unpredictable to those who live by manipulation, because their whole power system depends on predictability, knowing which buttons to press, which words to use. But you've disconnected every button. You've outgrown emotional puppetry. You no longer respond from a need to prove, please, or explain. You respond only when it aligns with truth. That's why they whisper about you. They call you hard to read, cold, or different, when in reality, you've just reclaimed your autonomy. You don't seek validation because you've outgrown needing permission to exist. You're not controlled by love, fear, guilt, or approval, and that's rare. People are used to being able to influence others with pressure, but you don't bend. You listen, you process, and then you decide. Not out of rebellion, but out of sovereignty. They don't fear you because you're a threat. They fear you because you can't be handled. And in a world built on manipulation, independence is the purest form of rebellion. You're not intimidating. You're uncontrollable. And that's the kind of freedom that shakes the room without ever raising your voice. Number 10. You turn every attack into a study. When life hits you hard, you don't spiral into victimhood. You switch into observation mode. You dissect the experience like a living lesson, breaking down every detail until you extract the wisdom buried inside it. You don't just feel pain, you investigate it. You ask what it's trying to show you, what it's training you to see, what blind spot it's exposing. That's how your intelligence evolved, not from comfort, but from collision. You became sharp because you refused to waste a single heartbreak, betrayal, or failure without understanding its design. When most people experience betrayal, they shut down. But you treat it like research. You watch patterns repeat and motives unfold. You learn who people become under pressure, what love looks like when tested, and how deceit always leaves fingerprints. That's why you don't get fooled twice. Not because you're paranoid, but because you studied deception like a language. You know the rhythm of lies, the tone of guilt, and the subtle arrogance of someone who thinks they're getting away with something. You've seen it all before, and now your awareness moves faster than their manipulation. Every pain you faced became an education in human nature. You learned empathy from heartbreak, patience from disappointment, and discernment from betrayal. What others call coldness in you is actually understanding. You no longer react because you already know how the story unfolds. You've learned that not every attack needs defense. Some just need observation. Because when you stay calm and study the chaos, people end up exposing themselves without realizing it. You've turned emotional wounds into a curriculum for wisdom. Every scar became a page of notes. Every loss became a case study. You learned that life doesn't test your strength. It tests your perception. And your perception now operates like divine technology, analyzing situations in real time. That's why your growth looks effortless. You've simply learned how to convert pain into data. You no longer take things personally. You take them seriously. You collect the lesson, integrate the code, and evolve. That's what makes you unstoppable now. You're not just surviving attacks, you're using them to refine your strategy. You turn every wound into wisdom, every betrayal into a blueprint. You don't just recover, you advance. Every hit only upgrades your understanding, and that's why no one can use pain against you anymore. Number 11. You know the difference between people who admire you and people who want to access you. That's a level of discernment that only comes from being used, drained, and studied like a resource. You've learned that attention isn't always admiration. Sometimes it's appetite. Some people don't want your friendship, they want your frequency. They don't respect your energy, they want to harvest it. You used to think being liked was proof of your goodness, but now you know being targeted is proof of your value. Not everyone smiles because they care. Some smile because they're calculating. You've grown past being flattered by interest. Now, when someone approaches, you don't get excited. You observe. You listen for intention beneath their words. You sense whether their questions are genuine curiosity or a quiet inventory of what you can offer. You've seen enough to know that not everyone who praises your light wants to see you shine. Some just want to stand close enough to be seen in your reflection. That's why you no longer give instant access to your space, time, or trust. You've learned that energy isn't something you share, it's something you guard. Your intelligence now works like a firewall, not cold, but clear. You let people reveal themselves through consistency, not conversation. You no longer chase connection. You allow it to earn its place. Because you've seen how quickly admiration can turn into envy, how support can turn into silent competition, and how curiosity can turn into surveillance. You've learned that real loyalty doesn't study you, it protects you. What once felt like isolation is now self-respect. You understand that your aura draws both lovers and leeches, mentors and mimics, fans and frauds. But your spirit has become fluent in energy. It detects hunger disguised as help, charm wrapped in deceit, and validation offered as bait. You no longer confuse kindness for character or attention for alignment. You've realized that your peace is the new luxury everyone wants access to, but few are willing to protect. That's your mastery now. You know who's clapping because they care and who's clapping because they're counting. You stopped giving backstage passes to people who only came for the show. Your discernment no longer apologizes. It just quietly filters. Number 12. You mastered emotional detachment without losing compassion, a balance that only the truly self-aware can maintain. It means you can see people clearly without letting their chaos contaminate your peace. You still care, but you don't carry. You still help, but you no longer bleed for those who enjoy watching you patch them up. That's what makes your intelligence unsettling. You've learned to feel without falling, to understand without absorbing, to care without collapsing. You discovered that compassion without boundaries is self-destruction dressed as virtue. You used to think being kind meant being available, that forgiveness required reunion, that love demanded tolerance. But now you know better. You can forgive someone and still deny them access. You can wish someone healing while knowing you're not their medicine. You can be soft and still be strong. That's evolution, not arrogance. Your emotional detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. You see through guilt tactics, emotional bait, and dramatic performances designed to reel you back in. You've stopped mistaking pity for purpose. You've realized that empathy should connect, not consume. You've outgrown the savior complex, the exhausting idea that your light must constantly enter dark rooms to prove its worth. You now understand that some people prefer darkness. Your job was never to convert them, only to preserve your flame. The truth is, manipulators hate balanced people. They rely on extremes, either your devotion or your indifference. But when they can't make you chase or collapse, they lose control. They don't know how to handle someone who loves without attachment, who forgives without forgetting, who can walk away without wishing harm. That's why your peace unnerves them. It exposes how powerless they really are once their manipulation no longer works. You've matured into emotional intelligence, the kind that can sit with someone's pain without making it your own. You no longer react to guilt, only to truth. You've learned that peace isn't found in detachment from people, but in detachment from their chaos. You became unshakable because you finally learned the art of loving wisely, not less. And that quiet strength is something no manipulator can ever counterfeit or control. Number 13. You don't predict people. You decode their operating system. You no longer waste time trying to guess their next move because you've learned how to read the programming behind it. Everyone runs on a certain code built from childhood wounds, hidden fears and subconscious habits, and once you understand that, their behavior stops being confusing. You don't react anymore, you interpret. That's the difference between guessing and knowing. Most people interact at the surface level, responding to what's said instead of what's driving it. You've trained your mind to move differently. You notice the patterns, how someone avoids accountability, how they disguise insecurity as confidence, how they use humor to dodge vulnerability. You see it all, not because you're paranoid, but because your awareness has become surgical. You don't need to predict. The code tells you everything. It's like seeing the architecture beneath the chaos. And that's what unnerves people about you. They're used to fooling others with charm, manipulation, or emotional fog, but your perception cuts straight through it. You don't get caught in the story. You read the subtext. When someone tries to play a game, you can see the motive before they make the move. That's not arrogance. It's observation refined by experience. You've been lied to, betrayed, and underestimated enough times to develop emotional X-ray vision. You understand that behavior isn't random, it's repetitive. Everyone reveals their truth in patterns, and once you catch it, the guessing game ends. That's why you don't chase explanations anymore. When people show you how they operate, you believe them the first time. You no longer argue with actions or negotiate with inconsistency. You know that words are marketing, but patterns are contracts. This level of intelligence doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. You still care, but you don't confuse empathy with blindness. You can love someone deeply while fully understanding their dysfunction. You can give grace without granting access. Because once you've decoded someone's system, you no longer take their behavior personally. You recognize it as programming. That's the power of your mind now. You don't react to people, you read them. And that quiet accuracy is what makes you untouchable in a world addicted to pretense. Number 14. You stopped trying to prove you're the smartest and became the wisest. Once upon a time, you felt the need to demonstrate your intelligence, to be understood, validated, or respected. But then you realized that true intelligence doesn't compete, it calibrates. It's not about outsmarting people, it's about outgrowing the need to. You learned that sometimes the sharpest mind isn't the one that speaks first, it's the one that stays silent long enough to see the full picture. Wisdom taught you restraint, and that restraint became your power. You started to see how showing everything you know can become self-sabotage. Some people don't want to learn. They want to measure you. Others don't want truth, they want ammunition. You stopped feeding minds that only seek ego battles. You learned that you don't have to swing your sword in every fight. Sometimes the real win is walking away with your peace intact. Your intelligence stopped being reactionary. It became surgical. You no longer expose your depth to prove a point. You reveal it when it serves purpose. That's divine precision, knowing when to speak, when to hold back, and when to let silence do the talking. You understand that control is more impressive than cleverness. Anyone can be loud, few can be composed. You don't argue with ignorance, you observe it. You don't fight to be right. You wait for truth to reveal itself. You used to want to be seen as the smartest in the room. Now you'd rather be the calmest. because wisdom knows that intellect is wasted if it can't master emotion. Your maturity is what truly unsettles people. They expect you to flex, to react, to prove. But you've evolved past that stage. You've realized that knowing you could destroy someone with your words doesn't mean you should. Your restraint isn't weakness. It's proof of mastery. You choose understanding over humiliation, clarity over confrontation, timing over impulse. That's what makes your intelligence divine now. It's not loud, it's accurate. You don't move to impress. You move with purpose. You've turned intellect into insight, logic into discernment, and knowledge into grace. You no longer seek to be the smartest. You've become something far rarer, wise enough to know when not to use it. At the end of the day, what people whisper about you says more about their confusion than your character. They can't understand how you stayed 10 steps ahead without ever announcing your moves. They can't grasp how you can love without being used, forgive without forgetting, and walk away without bitterness. You've become a mystery because you no longer react like everyone else. You think differently, move differently, and perceive differently. You don't chase approval. You command respect through quiet consistency. And that's what makes you so dangerous. Your power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from discipline. You've mastered what most people fear, self-awareness. You can read the energy behind the words, sense the truth behind the performance, and see through the masks people wear just to feel safe. You've turned your pain into pattern recognition, your solitude into strategy, and your silence into spiritual armor. You no longer need to expose people. Your presence does that automatically. That's why they whisper. That's why they watch. Because deep down, they know you've reached a level of clarity that can't be faked, bought, or manipulated. You became the person who doesn't just survive betrayal, you study it. You don't just spot deception, you understand its design. You don't just detach, you evolve. Your intelligence is no longer a weapon, it's a wavelength. It's not meant to dominate others, but to protect your peace and guide your purpose. You've learned that true power is not in being understood, but in being self-contained. You're not intimidating. You're simply not programmable. You operate from truth, not triggers. And that's why the whispers will only get louder. Because in a world addicted to masks, authenticity is rebellion. You don't just walk into rooms, you shift the energy in them. You don't play games, you rewrite the rules. You are not the smartest person in the room, you are the most awake. And those who can't match your depth will always mistake it for danger. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else needs to hear it too. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with those who move in quiet power just like you. Leave a comment below if you know you've reached that stage where peace has become your priority and wisdom your weapon. Until next time, stay grounded, stay sharp, and never dim your brilliance for comfort. The world needs your clarity now more than ever. God bless you.